Hey guys, it's Angie. This is kind of one of those ranty, wanted to get my emotions out kind of video. I don't think I'm gonna get super emotional because the initial shock of it has had a few days to wear off. I had talked to some of you about, some of you had been watching some of my videos from last year and asking if things had gotten better this year, and I had mentioned that it was going well, but then our family took a hit, something pretty unfortunate happening to my grandmother. Some of you were curious as to what that was, so I thought I would talk about it here and use this as sort of like a feelings diary entry, I guess, to talk about it a little more, because I have talked about it with people in my family and it's still under my skin a little bit, and I don't know, maybe putting this in a video and maybe hearing some of your experiences with it might help. I don't know. But anyway, my grandmother, a few days ago, my grandmother was robbed in her house while she slept. Before I get too far into the story, let me explain and give you a little bit of background information about my grandparents. My grandparents, I don't know how long they've lived in the city of San Diego itself, but the house my grandmother lives in now, they bought back in the late 70s and have been there ever since. My grandpa was lifetime military. He retired a full, really respected naval captain. When they bought the house, he was nearing his retirement point, and grandma picked out that house to spend their retirement days in, and it was a big accomplishment for them because neither one of my grandparents came from big money. My great-grandparents on my grandmother's side were missionaries, and my great-grandfather was a naval chaplain. My grandparents on my granddad's side were just blue-collar, working-class Irish family. And I mean Irish, like still had the accent Irish when my grandpa was growing up. Yet neither one of them came from big, well-to-do families. They weren't like trust fund babies or anything. They had to work for everything. My grandpa, he came from one of those standard Irish families with a lot of kids, and education was always really important in our family throughout the generations, but it was also one of those things where my great-grandparents told him, by all means get an education, but we can't help you much if you want college education. And so he went into the military with the idea that it was just going to be a few years and he was going to get enough to pay for a college degree and go into something he wanted to do. But once he was in the military, he found out that it really suited him. It really spoke to a lot of his strengths and interests. So he ended up making a lifetime of it. While my grandpa was in the Navy, over the course of their marriage, my grandmother ended up birthing 10 children. And my grandma's a tiny woman. I mean, she's even tinier now, but I think she started out at like maybe 5'4", 5'5", something like that. And now she's shrunk down to like 5'2", I think. She birthed, I don't remember now, 6 daughters and 4 sons, I believe it was. I sometimes get that mixed up. Yeah, she had all those kids that she raised, and a lot of the time she was by herself because my grandpa was in the Navy. He traveled on ships a lot. He worked through numerous wars, so they didn't see each other a lot through his working career. And so they bought that house in San Diego as sort of a congratulations to themselves for all the years they spent scrimping and saving and sacrificing and spending time away from each other. They saw that they had a bit of a windfall coming to them with my grandpa's retirement, so they decided they were going to get something. Not in the house they live in is not lavish by any means. It's just one of those simple Spanish style. It's bigger than a bungalow, but it's not huge. I forget the exact term of the house, but it's kind of like the hacienda style. The house itself dates back to like the 1930s, so it is a historical house, I guess, but it's not lavish. And they did a lot of work themselves to get it the way it is now. Had to do a lot of renovations themselves. And they were able to get it for a really good deal in the 70s and have lived there ever since. And they've been able to travel the world and see things. And my grandpa ended up passing away in 2007 from cancer. And my grandma's lived there by herself ever since. And my grandma has that very much like Betty White vitality. My grandma's just shy of 90 and she still goes out and drives every day, goes to an exercise class, gets her own groceries, pumps her own gas, all that stuff. She lives a very quiet life. She gets her groceries, she goes out with her friends to dinners or lunches from time to time, go shopping, and basically she just wants to stay at home and read a lot and visit her kids once in a while. Bringing that up to present day, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about the kind of people my grandparents were, and lived through the Depression and World War II and all kinds of economic hard times. So what I heard was, I'm hearing this through my mom. My grandma lives like 3,000 miles away from me, so it's hard for me to get it directly from her a lot of times. Right now she's caught up in trying to get her life back on track, and I don't want to add stress to it, because the relationship my grandma and I have, what typically happens is, if something stressful happens to her, I've learned over the years that if I want to know exactly what she's feeling, I don't go to her directly when it's happening. Let the initial shock die down a little bit, and then I'll maybe approach her some weeks or months down the road and I'll say, I was just curious how you've been adjusting or something like that. And I've found that if I approach her then as opposed to right when something happens, she's much more receptive to tell me her actual feelings, other than, it's not so much, if I ask her in the moment, she'll be like, oh no, it's fine, it's great. And if I ask her down the road, she'll be a lot more honest with me and I'll get a lot more real response. And she and I have had a lot of really great heart-to-hearts doing it that way. So I haven't gotten her side of things just yet, because it's still a little bit raw and I don't want to approach it directly to her just yet. So I've been getting this from my mom, but what I was told was that my grandma came home from I think grocery shopping a few days ago, and she had come in, she'd done a bunch of errands for the day, she was kind of tired. They have their washing machine area set up in the garage, so she put on a load of wash, and then she was feeling tired, so she decided she was going to take a nap for a little bit while the laundry was going. And they have one of those houses where nobody really ever uses the official front door. Everybody kind of goes through the side door, and it's this old wooden screen door that has a latch on it. And most of the time she'll remember to latch the door. This one day, I think because she was so tired, she must have gone in and must have forgotten to put the latch on. And it was while she was sleeping that someone broke into her house. Didn't take everything out, but they took a lot of important pieces to her. They took her wedding ring, my grandfather's wedding ring. They took a lot of jewelry that maybe didn't have a lot of monetary value, but it had a lot of sentimental value because they were pieces that my grandpa had picked out for her over the years. And, of course, you guys probably understand when you're in a relationship with somebody and they give you pieces like that. Over the years, those build up memories around them. It's not just the jewelry piece, it's where you were as a couple at that time when they gave you that piece, and where you were financially, or the reason why somebody gave you something. All those memories are wrapped up in those pieces. So I'm guessing she tends to have some of her favorite pieces always sitting out on her dresser, and I'm guessing the people just went in and just swiped. I don't know how many people came in, but I'm guessing they just swiped whatever they could easily grab, but they grabbed a lot. They also took, she has a habit of leaving like her purse and her car keys and her checkbook and everything right on the counter by the door. So they took all of that. They took her checkbook, her wallet with all her information, her cards and everything, her car keys. I think they might have left her purse but took everything that was important, all her identification. Took her car. I think my mom said there was even a large flat screen that was taken out of the house. But it was mainly the jewelry that my grandma had been collecting over the years. And some of these pieces date back to the 40s, obviously irreplaceable. But one of the things that disturbed me about the story was the fact that the way it was told to me, it sounded like whoever broke in must have been scoping her out for a while to know exactly when to come into the house. You know, it's like the one time they caught her off guard, and I don't know, there was just something very creepy and disturbing about it. And I'm really relieved that she wasn't physically harmed. I don't think she even saw the guy. I don't think she heard him. She just found all these things gone when she woke up. She just discovered that, you know, all of her important day-to-day materials, as far as like her car keys and her identification, that had all been gone, and a bunch of jewelry had been swiped from her house. Not just from her bureau, but from other places. She does have some locked away. I don't think they got to the stuff that was locked away, but the stuff she has locked away, that is a result of a break-in they had before, years ago. It was a few years before my grandpa had died. They went on vacation, and again, they're usually pretty good about putting things away and, you know, locking up the house tight before they go anywhere. This one time, I guess they were kind of in a rush to get to the airport, and Grandma didn't put everything away. And some of her, I mean, she didn't have stuff laying out. She had the boxes she kept them in on the dresser, and all those things were taken. And again, a few of the pieces that were taken that time were sentimental pieces that my grandpa had given her. And then just last year, there was also a different sort of break-in into my grandma's house. It wasn't a robbery. It was actually a mentally unstable man who somehow found his way into the house. It was not only my grandma there, but I also had an aunt, and one of my female cousins was also visiting. So 3 women in a house, and this deranged man breaks in and starts confronting people in the house and saying, this is his house, this is his house. And they kept trying to get him out of the house, and of course was scared for my cousin. She's, I don't know if she's even in, I think, well, she might be 14 now, but she's pretty young. My aunt was freaking out and scared for her daughter, and Grandma's freaking out because she doesn't know who this guy is, just broke into her house. Had to call the cops then and got that guy out, and just all these things that have been happening the last few years. It's made me really sad and really pissed at how downhill the world feels like it's going. Because when I was growing up, my teen years, I lived with my grandparents in that house for a while. And when I was a teenager, that was a really safe neighborhood. It was mainly just retired military. There were a couple families with young kids, but for the most part, it was just retired military people that lived in that little neighborhood. And the neighborhood she lives in is, when they first bought the house, it wasn't anything major as far as the neighborhood. They just really liked the house. But over the years, it's become a pretty affluent neighborhood and a really desirable place within San Diego County to live. So now her living in a desirable, affluent neighborhood, it's unnerving to see things like this happening that frequently around her house. And it bothers me because, like I said, when I lived there, I lived with my grandparents for a time when I was a teenager, and I had a job not far from the house while I lived there, and I used to walk to and from work every day and not think anything of it. I never felt threatened, nothing. It was a really calm, chill neighborhood. It was great. I loved that period in my life, and it's just really sad to know that neighborhood's not like that anymore, and to have the reality that those days are gone, that my grandma's sense of security in her own house is gone, that now she's probably gonna be freaked out to go to bed every night. And it pisses me off that somebody robbed her of that on top of all of the things that were important to her. And it pisses me off that someone did that to her because of knowing who my grandma is and what she's been through. She's been through so many tragedies in her life. She lost my great-grandfather died in a pretty horrific car accident when he was in his 40s. So she lost her father early, and then she had a twin brother who died in a drowning accident when I think they were 12. So she lost her brother. Then she's had a number of situations where she's escaped near death herself because my great-grandparents traveled around the world, and they lived in some areas that were very rural and very exposed to natural disasters and cave-ins and that sort of thing. So she survived that, and when she got into her own adult life, and I mentioned she had 10 children. The last one she had didn't survive past a few weeks, so she had to bury a child. As far as my grandpa, he died of cancer, so she had to sit there in a hospital and watch her very best friend on the planet waste away. And she had to, even my own mother, my mother is my grandmother's oldest daughter. My mother was born with club feet and a condition that turned her rib cage in on her heart. And so the first few years of my mom's life, she had multiple surgeries to fix all these things, because they were saying that if that wasn't fixed, my mom would probably either be an invalid or not live very long. And then my mother also had a number of other childhood illnesses that kept her in and out of the hospital a lot. So she had to my grandma had to deal with that. And, my brother, who is my grandmother's oldest grandson, has gone through a lot of life-threatening challenges. And she's had to watch him be very sick. I've had my own problems health-wise that she's had to watch me go through, and it's just the woman has been through so much, and all she wanted was a good house to have a quiet life in, where she could visit with her friends and be in a nice neighborhood and have quiet time to read and visit with her family. And some jackass has got to come in because they're too lazy to go get a real job, or they're too heartless to give a shit about what people have been through in their life or what they honestly earned. And they're just going to come in and be like, well, this is mine. And it just pisses me off on so many levels. And it's also enraging because I have that feeling of like being angered, but also feeling like I can't do anything. I don't have the financial means to fix everything for her, and that's really upsetting when you have a family member you care about and you can't do jack shit to fix their problems as much as you want to, because you don't have the means. I was gonna postpone doing this video until I was thinking about postponing it until I had a better idea of how the situation turned out. My grandma did report it to the police, And again, that was a little upsetting because the police were like, oh yeah, well, you know, there's been like 8 other break-ins in your neighborhood in the last few days, so we're not surprised. And like, being awful casual about this, why would you not, I don't know, send out, I don't know what the procedure is to do that, but why would you not like increase security in that neighborhood, or contact the community leader and say, you know, hey, can you send out a memo to residents and say that there's been a rash of break-ins and maybe be more vigilant about locking doors, or I don't know, something. But it was just their casualness about like, oh yeah, we're not surprised. They just acted like they were just gonna file a report and, you know, oh, if something comes of it, something comes of it. My grandma is trying to do all the steps you do when you've been robbed. She went and canceled her accounts and opened new ones and reported it to the police, and she tried to get some money back from the items she had itemized that had been stolen. But the problem was, she soon discovered that the jewelry appraiser said that if you don't appraise your jewelry, if you have, you know, high-end pieces and you don't appraise them every few years, that it can really affect the value. As it turns out, my grandma hadn't had some of those pieces appraised in like 20 years because she wasn't worried about it. She wasn't thinking, she's not constantly thinking about like, what is this value, you know, should I sell this off? No, those were like felt important pieces to her. She wasn't thinking about monetary value, so she didn't think about having them appraised all the freaking time. And so she only ended up getting a fraction of what was probably their actual value. And with the car also being stolen, you know, she doesn't have a ton of savings. She does have savings, but a lot of her savings she ends up using towards helping out less fortunate people in the family. So typically what happens is it gets depleted and then she'll build it back up, and then it gets depleted and then she'll build it back up. But it was a tough year for a number of people in our family, and she had helped out a few different people, and so she doesn't have a lot of funds to go out and buy a brand new car. And so she's struggling with that a little bit. I think right now she is working with a rental. And I have my oldest uncle, her oldest son, from Oregon, drove down, and he's been helping her try to get things back on track and see what they can find out about the people that victimized her, and see what they can do about it, see if they, you know, can move it along. Because I don't know if people are kind of a pushover with my grandma because she is small and elderly, but my uncle that came down, all my uncles are very tall guys, and especially my uncle from Oregon, he's I think he might be the tallest one of them all, and has kind of an imposing figure because he looks very much, what's the word, Oregonian. Very, like, you know, burly, and like he just stepped out of the woods because he did work as a lumberjack for a number of years. But he came down and he's been trying to, I guess, use some of his male influence to try to get better answers and better results for her. So I don't know the outcome of everything just yet. Like I said, it's only been a few days, but it just irks me that there are people out in the world that think that it's okay to go through life like that. And I almost want to tell the people that robbed her, like, to put it in perspective for them and be like, consider if you were like one of those animals in the animal kingdom that pilfer things from other animals. And you have your little stash. Would you not be pissed if you spent all this time stealing all this stuff from all the other woodland creatures or whatever, and then somebody else came in and stole your stash from you after you spent all that time robbing people? I mean, you're talking about criminals, so I'm thinking, you know, to put it in perspective where they were to relate to. You gotta get on their level. Ask them, you know, would that not piss you off to have somebody you don't know come in and take all your stuff that you've worked weeks or months or years to build up? It's hard for me to fathom how people cannot be empathetic towards that, as far as like, you know, people who steal from other people. I'm not talking about people in general, just people who are okay to go through life, you know, with those actions. And it's hard for me to understand that mentality of, yeah, I don't give a shit how much work you put into this. This is mine now. So I don't know. I guess I should just be grateful that I was raised better. But that can also really burn me a lot of days, because I run into a lot of people who weren't raised better, apparently, and are okay with living more unsavory lifestyles. I don't know. It just makes me depressed, because I guess because I like to imagine people having so much potential, and then I get let down by people a lot. And I just wish that this world was better than it is. The reality of the world just makes me really depressed. And I do honestly believe that people should at least do their part because what I was raised with was to always, wherever you are in the world, make your little spot wherever you are as best as it can be. Always make it better, or at least try to make it better than it was when you got there. And that was the mentality my parents always raised us with. And I still honestly believe that. I don't think I will ever stop doing that. I don't think I will ever stop entirely caring about people and wishing for the best and wishing for that kind of, you know, utopian life that I picture in my head. That's probably never going to happen, but I don't think I will ever stop striving for that. It's just, I guess at the end of the day, it makes me so sad that the minority evil seems to have the upper hand so often. I just wish we were, as a race, stronger than that, and we could tamp that out better. I don't know. I think maybe it has a lot to do with so many people in the world not being aware of their own individual strength and thinking that that's it, that we just have to deal with the way the world is. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's important to motivate people to believe in their own inner strength and realize that, you know, I believe that everybody inside has a badass person in them. It just can sometimes take a lifetime to figure it out. And maybe they don't ever find it, but I think it's in everyone. I think I found mine early because I was put through a lot of shit really early in life. And I had to find mine to brace myself against a lot of the challenges I was put through. But it's hard, you know. I think there are a lot of strong people in the world, but we need a lot more. It's hard when it feels like there's a small army of strong people. It's just, everybody needs to find their inner badass and start getting on these people that think that we're just weak lemmings. I don't know. I'm just rambling now, and I have so much aggravation inside about the state of the world that I don't know if it's going to make much more sense now, because I don't know. I think I would need a lot more liquor in me to start making sense with where my brain is starting to go. But I know that was that's the situation as far as what happened with Grandma and the hit this new year took. But I don't think that that means that the year is ruined. I think it's just one more challenge we have to, you know, work around and become stronger from. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna stop it here, guys. Just wanted to let you know that that's what happened, and yeah, if you have any thought or feedback or relevant story or anything like that you want to share down below, feel free to. And yeah, I guess that's good enough. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.